grab your VHS remote and dim the lights. Tonight we're ranking 6 80s slasher classics that never got the love of Halloween or Friday the 13th, but earned cult status anyway. From birthday parties gone deadly to a prank holiday turned bloody, we're counting down from watchable curiosity to genre masterpiece. Some picks will surprise you. Stick around to see which forgotten gem earns the crown as the greatest cult slasher of the 80s.
Will die. Delta Road car. Never will.
The Initiation, 1984. We're kicking things off with a film that even hardcore slasher fans tend to forget exists. 1984's The Initiation. The setup follows Kelly, a college freshman pledging a sorority, who's plagued by nightmares tied to a childhood trauma involving a fire and her estranged father. As part of her sorority's hazing ritual, she and her pledge sisters break into a department store after hours, and that's when the bodies start dropping. On paper, this actually sounds like a solid slasher premise. A mall setting at night is inherently creepy, full of mannequins, dark aisles, and industrial equipment just waiting to become murder weapons. And to be fair, the film does lean into that atmosphere reasonably well in its back half, especially once the survivors start realizing they're trapped with a killer. The problem is everything else. The pacing spends far too long on soap opera-style subplots about sorority drama and Kelly's family backstory before the actual killing even starts. And when the twist ending finally arrives, revealing the killer's identity and motive, it leans so heavily on convoluted psychological trauma that it ends up feeling more confusing than shocking. Performances are serviceable at best, forgettable at worst, and the practical kills, while occasionally creative, lack the punch or creativity that define the genre's classics. It's not an unwatchable film by any means, but compared to everything else on this list, The Initiation feels like a rough draft of ideas other slashers executed far better. Which brings us to a film that at least embraces its flaws with a wink. Slaughter High, 1986. If The Initiation is a slasher trying too hard to be serious, Slaughter High is the exact opposite problem. A film that seems barely aware of its own tone, and somehow that's part of its charm. The story centers on Marty, a nerdy high schooler humiliated by a cruel prank from his classmates that leaves him disfigured. Years later, his former tormentors receive mysterious invitations to a reunion at their old high school, and one by one, they're picked off by a killer in a jester mask wielding increasingly elaborate murder methods. Let's be honest, this film is not good in any conventional sense. The acting ranges from stiff to borderline incomprehensible. The American accents from its British cast are frequently distracting, and the plot logic falls apart if you think about it for more than a few seconds. But there's a reason Slaughter High has developed a genuine cult following over the decades. It's gloriously, unapologetically weird. The jester mask is a genuinely unsettling visual choice. Several of the death sequences are creative enough to stick in your memory, and the film has just enough self-aware camp energy to make it a blast to watch with friends. It lands here at number 2 not because it's a well-made film, but because So Bad It's Good only gets you so far up a ranking that includes films with actual craftsmanship behind them. Still, if you're building a horror movie night playlist, this one earns its spot purely on entertainment value. Speaking of films that trade polish for pure creepy atmosphere, let's talk about our next entry. Pieces, 1982. If Slaughter High is So Bad It's Good, Pieces takes that concept and cranks it up to 11. This is a film that has to be seen to be believed, and it's earned genuine cult legend status because of it. Set at a Boston college campus, the plot follows a killer assembling a human jigsaw puzzle from body parts harvested from murdered students, all stemming from a childhood trauma involving his mother and a puzzle of a nude woman. If that sounds unhinged, that's because it absolutely is, and the film never once slows down to catch its breath. Pieces is a Spanish-Italian production dubbed into English, and that alone gives it a uniquely off-kilter energy. Line deliveries land at strange angles. Plot logic bends in ways that feel almost dreamlike, and the tonal whiplash between grindhouse gore and unintentional comedy is constant. The kills are shockingly graphic for the era. The identity of the killer is genuinely unpredictable because the film cheats fair play entirely, and the whole thing builds to an ending so absurd it's become infamous in horror circles. One of those did that actually just happen moments that gets brought up in slasher conversations decades later. It's not a well-made film by any conventional standard, and if you're looking for craftsmanship, look elsewhere on this list. But if you want proof that early 80s slasher cinema was willing to go completely off the rails in pursuit of shock value, Pieces delivers that in spades. Its tagline promised audiences exactly what they were getting into, and remarkably, it delivered. Speaking of films that lean hard into forest-set dread, let's head into the woods for our next entry. Madman 1982. Madman leans hard into atmosphere over plot complexity, and that's exactly where it earns its spot on this list. Loosely inspired by local legends and clearly riding the wave of Friday the 13th's success, the film follows a group of camp counselors who make the classic mistake of telling a campfire legend out loud, summoning the vengeful spirit of Madman Mars, an axe-wielding killer said to still roam the woods surrounding the camp. One by one, the counselors are picked off as they search for their missing friends in the surrounding forest at night. What Madman lacks in narrative originality, it partially makes up for in mood. The nighttime forest setting is used effectively, with long, dread-soaked stretches of characters wandering through darkness with only flashlights cutting through the trees. And the sense of isolation feels genuine rather than manufactured. The kills, when they arrive, are brutal and unflinching, closer in tone to grimy backwoods horror than the more polished slashers of the era. Where the film stumbles is pacing. Long gaps between kills can drag, and the character work is thin enough that it's hard to feel much when the body count starts climbing. It's a film clearly made by people who understood the appeal of campfire legend comes to life, even if the execution doesn't fully capitalize on that premise. Still, for fans who prioritize atmosphere and a lingering sense of dread over cleverness, Madman delivers a solidly unsettling watch. From the woods, we're heading somewhere far more clinical and claustrophobic for our next pick.
I will cause distress and their flesh.
Alone in the Dark 1982. Alone in the Dark takes a genuinely different approach to the slasher formula, and that's exactly why it climbs a bit higher on this list. Instead of a masked killer stalking teenagers, the film follows a new psychiatrist who takes over at a mental institution, and through a stroke of bad luck during a citywide blackout, 4 dangerous patients escape and set their sights on him and his family at home. It's less who is the killer and more survive the night against 4 killers, which gives the film a tense, siege movie energy that sets it apart from most of its contemporaries. What really elevates Alone in the Dark is its cast. Genre legends Donald Pleasance and Jack Palance bring a gravitas to their roles that this kind of low-budget horror rarely gets, and Martin Landau is genuinely unsettling as one of the escaped patients. The film also isn't afraid to get weird. There's a punk band performing in the background of one of the most chaotic sequences, and the tone shifts unpredictably between horror, dark comedy, and social commentary about the mental health system. That unpredictability is both a strength and a flaw. Some of the film's satirical swings don't quite land, and the pacing sags in the middle stretch before the home invasion finale kicks into gear. Still, when that finale hits, it delivers real tension and a handful of memorable, genuinely disturbing images. It's a film that swings for something more ambitious than a typical body count movie, and even when it stumbles, you can respect the attempt. Next up, we're looking at a film infamous behind the scenes, but beloved for one unforgettable sequence. Curtains, 1983. Curtains has one of the most notorious production histories in slasher cinema. Multiple directors, reshoots stretched over 2 years, and a final cut that reportedly bears little resemblance to what was originally scripted. And yet, despite all that behind-the-scenes chaos, what made it to screen is a genuinely atmospheric, unsettling little film that's earned its cult reputation almost entirely on the strength of one sequence. The plot follows a group of actresses gathered at an isolated mansion to audition for a role, only to be picked off one by a killer wearing an eerie old hag mask. The character work is thin, the motivations murky, and the plot occasionally feels like it's missing scenes, which, given the production troubles, it likely is. But Curtains succeeds where it matters most for a slasher, mood and imagery. The isolated winter setting gives the film a cold, dreamlike quality that few of its contemporaries bothered to attempt, and it culminates in the film's signature moment, an ice-skating rink-stalking sequence that's become one of the most iconic and genuinely chilling scenes in the entire slasher subgenre. That one scene alone has kept Curtains alive in horror circles for decades, referenced and praised far more than the rest of the film around it. It's a flawed, disjointed watch overall, but when it hits its highlights, it hits them hard enough to justify its cult classic status. Now let's move into the top half of our list, starting with a film that proves slashers can actually have clever, well-constructed plots. The Prowler, 1981. The Prowler stands out from most slashers of its era for one simple reason: it takes its backstory seriously. The film opens in 1945, with a soldier returning from World War II to find his girlfriend has moved on with someone else, a betrayal that ends in a brutal double murder at a graduation dance, with the killer never identified. Decades later, as the town revives that same dance for the first time since the murders, someone in old military gear starts picking off the current generation of students one by one. What sets The Prowler apart is its craftsmanship. This is another Tom Savini effects showcase, and the kills here are legitimately some of the most well-executed practical gore of the entire slasher era. Visceral, inventive, and shot with a patience that lets them actually land instead of flashing by. The period-tinged backstory also gives the film a slightly different flavor than the usual masked killer. No motive formula, grounding the murders in a specific, tragic history rather than random psychosis. Where it falls short is pacing and character work. The middle stretch drags considerably, and the cast is largely forgettable outside of the final girl. Still, for gorehounds and practical effects enthusiasts, The Prowler is essential viewing, and it's aged remarkably well compared to slashers that leaned more on cheap scares than genuine craft. It's a film that knows exactly what it's good at and leans into it hard. Now let's shift gears to a film that proves this genre could actually be clever with its plotting. April Fool's Day 1986 April Fool's Day earns its high spot on this list for a reason most slashers of the era never even attempted. It actually has a smart, well-constructed script. The setup is familiar enough. A group of college friends head to a private island for a weekend getaway hosted by their wealthy classmate Muffy. But from the moment they arrive, the film starts playing games with its audience, quite literally. Pranks escalate, guests start disappearing under mysterious circumstances, and the tension builds around a central question the film keeps daring you to answer. Is this an actual killer, or an elaborate April Fool's joke gone too far? What sets this film apart is how deliberately it plays with slasher conventions. It knows you've seen this setup before, and it uses that familiarity against you, planting misdirects and red herrings that reward attentive viewers without feeling like a cheat. The ensemble cast has real chemistry. The isolated island setting is used effectively for both atmosphere and practical plot mechanics, and the film balances comedy and horror with a lighter touch than most of its peers. It's genuinely funny without undercutting its tension. The twist ending is famously divisive among horror fans. Some find it a clever subversion of genre expectations. Others feel it's a bit of a cop-out after all that build-up. But even its detractors tend to admit the journey getting there is one of the more well-crafted slasher experiences of the decade. It's proof that this genre could be more than just a body count. It could actually have a script worth talking about. Which brings us to our number one pick. A film so beloved, it's practically a rite of passage for horror fans.
Пожалуйста, помоги мне. Сейчас кто-то пытался... Привет, симпатяшка. Мистер Главный, сэр.
Happy Birthday to Me 1981. And here we are, the crown jewel of this list, and for good reason. Happy Birthday to Me follows Virginia, a student at an elite prep school and member of an exclusive social clique called the Top 10, who's haunted by fragmented memories of a car accident that killed her mother years earlier. As her upcoming 18th birthday approaches, her fellow clique members start turning up dead in increasingly inventive ways, and Virginia herself begins to suspect she might be losing her grip on reality, or worse, that she might be the one responsible. What earns this film the top spot isn't just its infamous kill sequences, though those absolutely deliver. The shish kebab scene alone has become legendary in horror circles for its shock value and creative execution. It's the fact that Happy Birthday to Me actually commits to being a mystery as much as a slasher. The film plants genuine psychological ambiguity around Virginia's mental state, gives its ensemble of victims enough personality that you actually register their deaths, and builds toward a genuinely unhinged third-act reveal that recontextualizes nearly everything that came before it. It's messy in places, and the tonal whiplash between teen drama and grisly horror won't work for everyone. But that ambition is exactly what separates it from more forgettable slashers of the era. Add in a truly unforgettable birthday party finale that goes for broke in the best possible way, and you have a film that's rightfully remembered as one of the defining cult slashers to come out of the golden age of the genre. If you watch only one film from this list, make it this one. And that wraps up our countdown of criminally underrated cult slashers from the golden age of horror. From the messy but ambitious ideas of The Initiation, all the way up to the psychological mystery and shocking finale of Happy Birthday to Me. These films prove that some of the most memorable moments in slasher history didn't come from the household names. They came from the deep cuts, the films you had to stumble onto by accident, the ones that stuck with you precisely because nobody else was talking about them. Whether you're a die-hard genre historian or just someone looking for your next horror movie night pick, Hopefully this list gave you a few new titles to track down and a few old favorites to revisit. So tell us in the comments, did we get this ranking right, or is your favorite sitting in the wrong spot? And which 80s slasher deserves the next deep dive? If you enjoyed digging through these forgotten classics with us, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we've got a lot more cult horror history where this came from. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.